Welcome to another episode of It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University alumni and friends community. My name is Mike Mitchell, Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at Salem State. Very excited to have for another episode in Season 5, a young graduate from the class of 2019, Mr. Tyreke Harris. Tyreke, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you, for having me. I
It's my
appreciate
pleasure. We're looking forward to talking with you today. I think you're the first SMS grad that we've had on the show so far, which, is like a special place in my heart because I was an SMS grad at Salem as well. So looking forward to sharing your story today. And the first question that I always like to ask guests on the show is, what brought you to Salem State? How did you end up here?
Yeah, so in high school, I was, looking to see where I wanted to go as far as next steps for college and, stuff like that. And I remember applying to Fitchburg State at the time, and I was working with my guidance counselor at the time, and she was assisting me with the application. And I remember that was like the only school I really applied to besides Salem State. And so I didn't end up getting into Fitchburg State. And then I remember, my guidance counselor telling me to uh, look into like community colleges. And then at the time, I wanted to go to a 4 year. And I was looking at Salem State, and then I heard about, them having the Summer Bridge Academy. I believe a few of, my peers in high school, they were uh, already like accepted into the Summer Bridge Academy. So I decided to do that. And then so I applied and then ended up getting into the Summer Bridge Academy. So I started early, I would say like July 2015. And, it was definitely a lot, but it gave me, the tools to to be able to, navigate college before, like the fall semester. So yeah, that's basically how I got my start at Salem State.
And Summer Bridge Academy, going through that program, knowing some of those team members over there, there's some outstanding people in that department, National Alexis and the whole gang over there. We love Ash here in our office as well. She's a proud double Viking too. So obviously we mentioned at the top, you were an SMS grad. What was your concentration while you were here, and what kind of have you been up to since you graduated?
Yeah, so my concentration while I was at SSU was sports management.
Me too.
And then,
Good choice.
yeah, so, I decided to obviously pursue a career in like athletics administration and like higher education. So, I actually ended up working within the athletic department back in 2018 for my junior year. But yeah, I ended up meeting Tracy Hathaway, and then she was the athletic director at the time. And then I was able to forge that connection with her. And then, I was able to actually get an opportunity through her too for like an internship with Salem Rex, um, their department in Salem, Massachusetts, and stuff like that. And then so I did a whole bunch of things. Like I worked at like youth clinics. I worked at like I think it's the Council on Aging, like that area across from like I think the Purple Line over there.
Yep.
But yeah, I worked in like the fitness center, so I was able to get a whole bunch of experience. And then yeah, I was doing internships. Like I remember I worked for like Zero Gravity, and I was their site director. And then they managed like AAU basketball tournaments and stuff like that. And I remember working for the North Shore Navigators.
Yeah, baseball team.
I was their event staff intern. I worked there, for free. So I was working my way up, and I decided to look into full-time roles. Uh, I think around when I was about to graduate, and then I was getting like a lot of no's, and I was getting discouraged. And I remember I actually applied for a role at BU, and then it was kind of to help with like their day-to-day operations for their athletics department. Didn't get that, but then I ended up applying for a role at MIT, and then I started to work for their recreation department, and then assist with like the day-to-day operations with the athletics department. So I was there for probably like 3 years, and then I decided to, make a move. And then I worked at the Boys and Girls Club in Laconia as their athletic director. Um, and then I also currently work for Manchester Community College as their athletic coordinator. I started in February, and then so I oversee all of the, you know, day-to-day operations of the entire athletic program. And we're just launching a program now, so we're going to start with men's basketball, esports, women's volleyball, and that's happening this fall. So I've been dedicated to that and trying to get the program, off the ground. So
And that's an area that I don't think people probably have a proper appreciation for how much work really goes into the creation of. Like, this is not a it's not to diminish, like, you're not designing a class, you're designing an entire athletics program. And
right.
so um, what kind of behind the scenes action goes into launching a collegiate athletic program like that?
I mean, first, like I started with just trying to gather interest in what the student athletes or potential student athletes, want as sports here. So I started with that, like a poll. I did you know, um, like what are you interested in as far as, sports and stuff like that. And then I started looking into coaches. I was interviewing coaches. And then I kind of narrowed down with like the poll that I had, and then just talking to people. Like I put myself out there and, went and talked to, different classes and stuff like that. So for example, there's this class called, I think it's like essentials, and then it's for like, first year students and stuff. And then, they tell you about just what's going on campus. And then like I created a video letting them know, that we have sports here and stuff like that. But yeah, so I ended up narrowing that down with men's basketball, women's volleyball, and then esports. And then after that, I was looking into uniforms. So I ordered uniforms. I had to come up with like a emergency action plan. A lot of like administrative stuff.
So
Friggin'
are these programs going to be NJCAA programs?
basically starting as a club, but still, playing neighboring schools
Great.
in the area. So I have a few games scheduled and stuff like that. So yeah.
And so in Manchester, they already have kind of an infrastructure in place to support an esports program, or are you kind of designing that from the ground up too?
So we had somebody in my role previously,
Yeah.
and he was trying to, get this started, but then he ended up, uh, I think taking on another job or whatever. And he was into esports. That was his like expertise. And then
Yeah.
so he had like an esports team for a little bit, but there wasn't really any infrastructure behind it. So
And that's something that we actually, I think the university launched last year, maybe or the year before, down in campus center. There's a beautiful new esports room, and this is like a craze it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about the community college world too, is that there's always a really good finger on the pulse of what students are into, because there has to be, right? Like, it has to be every public college in general, but specifically community colleges, are always looking for ways to engage students while they're there. And it's a challenging environment because a lot of community college students, like public colleges at Salem, they're working many jobs, they're taking care of families. And so if they're willing to make that investment of their own time and energy, big shout out to you guys for seeing that and putting something in place that gives them some other way to stay connected to the college.
yeah,
It's a
sure.
craze right now. It's wild.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so you mentioned in kind of talking about how you got to where you are now, the role that your internship experience has played in preparing you for professional life and collegiate athletics and recreational programming and things like that. If you were sitting, 5, 6, 7 years ago, talking to your sport management student self, or other students that might be in those chairs now, what do you think a piece of advice would be that you would give them for somebody who might be interested in athletics administration like you are?
I mean, you definitely have to be personable, and then I feel like, you know at the beginning of my career, I wasn't as personal. And then, you know, I was coming into like a supervisory role, but I didn't necessarily know how to be a leader. But, you know, I would just tell myself or other people that are pursuing this career, like, you know, it's okay to step outside your comfort zone. Like, even doing this right now is just me stepping outside my comfort zone because I'm more reserved and laid back. But, you know, I'm like trying to,
I'm gonna bring it out of you whether you want me to or not.
you know, so yeah, I would say just step outside your comfort zone and you know, um, forge connections. I feel like
Yeah.
networking is definitely important. You know, like I have mentors throughout this industry that, you know, I've known for 6+ years and stuff like that. And we've been able to, you know, build a connection in the field, but also build like a personal connection, you
Hmm.
know, and so, yeah, I think those two are definitely, important.
If you think back to your time in the sport management program, and this is something that I remember very fondly, Dr. McMahon used to walk in one of the first days of, I can't remember which class it was, but he would bang on the desk and he would go, networking,
Yeah,
networking, networking. And back then, I think he does now, but back then he used to have like the long red hair and he was like all in your face. And he was just like, you guys are never going to understand the importance of networking unless
right.
you start doing it. And so
Yeah.
it's nice to hear that that generational advice is still coming through. So,
And I'm even thinking about those classes too, like the sports management classes. You know, I had to step outside my comfort zone, and then like professors would walk in and they would want you to do that. So
mhm.
it definitely helped. You know,
It's and it's such a unique field, right? I mean, collegiate athletics, athletics administration, there's never the same day twice. I mean, you are experiencing a student athlete in every phase of their life. And, you know, it's one thing if you have to miss a class, you know, maybe you have a sibling or a little one you have to take care of, but, you know, missing a class versus having to miss a game or a match. And now your
right?
teammates are like, it's a lot. And so navigating not only the development of the program, but the development of those student athletes within that program. I mean, you gotta have a thick skin. You gotta be ready for kind of everything. So,
Sure.
um, you know, your life is going to be very busy for the next long term, but it sounds like you're off to a good start up there. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
um, as you think back on your time at Salem, it sounds like you've enjoyed your path. And one of the things that I appreciate about the world of sports and athletics is you had mentioned earlier, you know, you applied for a gig, you heard no, you applied for another gig, you heard no. Sports is an industry where you're not always going to get that yes right away. And
Right.
so that resilience is important. But if you think you could go back, would you change anything in your path that brought you to where you are?
I don't think so because you know my path is my path, and it's just like it is what it is, and I'm grateful for my path, and I feel like everything that I've been through thus far, you know, I've learned from it. So, you know, I just feel like your path is important to you.
And what about, um, what is it about being a member of the Salem State alumni community that means the most to you? What does it mean to you to be a member of this community?
I feel like it's you know Viking pride and just that sense of like community and like you know tight knit family like atmosphere because I feel like I've met you know some people that I still talk to this day, and that's what I think about you know when I look back at what is you know a Viking pride to me. So
And before I let you go, you know, it was funny. Our time together had kind of come together just kind of out of the blue. I mean, you had sent me a note and you said, "Hey, I love what I'm seeing with these episodes. Can I help share my story?" And that's the first time I've ever gotten an email like that. So
right,
I appreciate you reaching out. I think you're an incredibly talented, bright young guy with an extraordinary future ahead of you. I wish you the continued best. I know you'll stay in touch now that we've got a friendship and a relationship. Very exciting news in your personal life. You're recently engaged as well, so a lot of exciting
I
things happening there too. Congratulations.
appreciate it.
But yeah, man, can't wait to see you know how these programs develop for you over the next years. I wish you the continued best. Stay in touch, and thanks for joining us on the show, man.
Thank you.
This has been another episode, Season 5, It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University Alumni and Friends community. Until next time, my name is Mike Mitchell. Thanks for watching.